Good evening, everyone.
All right, everybody. This is episode 37 of the Beef and Bitcoin podcast with your host, Brett and CH. Good show for you today. It is Friday afternoon. Had an interesting day in the equity markets. Bitcoin's been moving around a little bit as well. And it seems like a ton of news happened today. There were some issues with the exchanges. Amazon Web Service was having a few problems. We'll talk about that. A few people got super lucky. We got the trade war going full steam ahead. And it looks like our good friends at the Central Bank of England, is that right?
Yeah,
looks like
Bank of England.
Bank of England. It looks like they want to jump into the ring and issue a virtual reserve currency with other central banks. So Fed coin, so to speak, except without the Federal Reserve. So a lot of great topics to cover today. But other than that, what's going on today?
Not much. I mean, as you said, there is a lot of stuff going on right now. And I think the reality is all the people, especially like higher ups, the politicians, the big bankers, all talk shit about cryptocurrency and Bitcoin in 2017, 2016, and before are eating their words now as they all explore different digital currency, options. And we're seeing more and more of it now. Obviously, this BOE thing's huge, and we'll jump into that later. But I think we're just going to jump into the Squawk Box. Our boy Joe Kernan. This dude, if you like to watch CNBC, he's good to watch. I really like what he has to say a lot of times. He says what's on his mind, doesn't really care. I'm going to play this, and anyone listening should be able to hear it play.
Where are you on Libra?
I have never understood it. I don't like it one bit. I don't like it because it's centralized. I don't like it because it's Facebook. I don't like it because it's, everybody gets to keep the float. I don't like it because it's like a debit card. I don't like it because it doesn't have any inherent value. I don't like it because it's not. I don't like anything about it. Nothing.
I don't think it's that problematic.
Well, you get yourself a PayPal or a Venmo or something.
I think it's like a stable coin. That's all it is. It's a stable coin. And by the way, in certain places, it should actually be very helpful.
Underbanked places.
The
thing that's so exciting,
the ability to transfer money across borders. Think about the Uber driver who wants to send money back home to some other country, who now is typically going to Western Union and spending a fortune. I mean, that's where the opportunity.
You haven't caught the bug. You haven't caught the bug that it's based on a fiat currency, so it solves nothing. It solves nothing except you get.
Depends on what they're trying to solve. If they just want Facebook in the middle of the payment,
and it also there's people there's people taking it. You think they're doing this out of the goodness of their heart? There's people taking a cut. There's an intermediary. It's not decentralized.
100%.
Mark Zuckerberg's going to steal all your private data and know all about your bank account now.
Look, if the fees are materially lower than what the banking
how about
system
zero
is,
fees?
If
here's
they're
one for
taxing
you.
the rest of the world.
Western Union is up 28% year to date.
So the pair trade there
is not working right.
The Facebook Western Union pair trade not working.
At least the short.
Exactly.
There's something called unforgeable value.
Right.
Antiques, gold,
yep.
Things that you can't duplicate.
I thought people were saying
and that's how
now,
Bitcoin is different than Libra.
I never said Bitcoin was like Libra.
Well,
there's some
wait
papers.
for Bitcoin to become.
Have you talked about how there's apparently they've now established that Bitcoin can be hacked? Not how it will or whether it will, but just that it can be. And
you mean the
there's something making I don't know. I don't follow
the blockchain can be.
So I'm told from my Bitcoin guy that they're all paying attention to this.
So what did he sell everything or something?
I don't think he owns it in the first place.
Oh,
so maybe
just researcher.
Yeah, so Joe goes in that video, and he's a pretty staunch defender of crypto, or Bitcoin, I'd say. And he does a pretty good job saying it, because the other guy, Andrew Sorkin, basically says, it'd be great for people to use, Libra for cross-border transactions instead of Western Union. But, Facebook, at this point, if you trust Facebook, you're just stupid. I'm just going to put it out there flat. Facebook has stolen everyone's shit, their identities, released it, through the Cambridge Analytica scandal, it was a year ago about.
Yep.
It's, you can't trust Facebook. You literally can't. Anyone, and obviously most of us are guilty of giving them giving them our information, but honestly, fuck Facebook, and pardon my language, but really I like. There's not many companies I want to see burn, but that's definitely one of them. I just want to see them burn. And like the Libra, for the love of God, stay away from that thing. That is, as Joe was saying on this, and I'm sure you heard it earlier, CH, he basically says there's a middleman taking a pay cut here. And also, why would you want to give Mark Zuckerberg all your banking information? It just doesn't make any sense.
Right. And what I love about Joe being so hardline about a lot of this stuff is you are seeing him kind of go through that progression of becoming a Bitcoiner and being able to like knock down a lot of the FUD and all of the reasoning behind why something like Libra isn't such a good idea, right? He's talking about centralization. He's talking about giving up a lot of your information. He's talking about the middleman. He's, saying how it doesn't have any, inherent value to it because it's not really solving any other problems. And he sounds like me probably like a year ago trying to, to defend Bitcoin. And it is really awesome to see. And you can see that he's not easily shaken or rattled by
no, he doesn't take shit.
I don't know what her name is there, but she was pretty much like, oh, my Bitcoin guy just told me that it can get hacked. And he was like, what are you even talking about? Yeah. And she's literally just parroting someone who doesn't even own any, is like, oh no, don't worry, it can be hacked. So these are the kinds of things where just the majority of people have no clue what they're talking about, and you're seeing these people on TV, and the average person is like, oh, I trust that person. They're on the magic television. They could never lie to me or tell me like it just gets more and more ridiculous. And Bitcoin actually helped open my eyes to more of that fake news, or not even fake news at this point, just like understanding understanding who knows what they're actually talking about with a lot of this stuff. And fucking woke Joe has definitely jumped down the rabbit hole, and I've seen him say other things that I know the people who said those exact quotes, and he's like parroting them exactly word for word, and it's just so awesome to see him. He's definitely spending a few nights jumping down the rabbit hole, reading Medium articles and other shit, and listening to podcasts saying things like, Bitcoin is exponential technology built on exponential technology and stuff like that. So it is pretty cool to see that.
Yeah. I mean, I still can't get over this chart. I mean, most average people don't look at charts, but this is like, to think of where we came from in December and just went, and it's not like a big deal to most people. That just shows you how to touch most of the mainstream is.
Right. And I mean, like, I guess it's becoming mainstream-ish again, but also there isn't that excitement in the air yet. It's really not there. Dude, it's not there.
Nothing compares to what was going on, even like in early 2017, like in May or June, like nothing compares to that. But obviously it got much worse in the fall of 2017, but nothing compares to the hype and the enthusiasm, the engagement,
Yeah, and we're not even close to it yet.
No. You want to jump in this Amazon cloud issue?
Yeah, definitely.
So I didn't even know this. CH kind of told me about this a little bit ago. Basically, problems with Amazon's cloud service, AWS, are disrupting services at some crypto exchanges, and then the Binance exchange is seeing problems internationally, according to its CEO, CZ, or Changpeng Zhao, if I said that even closely correct. And basically he tweeted, AWS is having an issue, mostly with caching services affecting some users globally. We are working with them and monitoring the situation closely. It's causing some 500 error messages on the APIs and affecting some withdrawal process. KuCoin said it was having issues with AWS Tokyo hosted services. But one of the most interesting things was, and you mentioned this to me, people were able to buy Bitcoin for under $1 on certain exchanges. And like, there's a screenshot in a Telegram of BitMax's official Telegram channel and the Bitcoin USDT pair, which is Tether's US dollar Tether. There's like two orders for Bitcoin that show 35 cents and 32 cents. Someone bought 45 Bitcoin at 32 cents. Someone bought 3 Bitcoin at 35 cents. So that's pretty interesting. And then there's a chart from the SitX exchange order book that shows like the candle that, popped all the way down to as low as 32 cents, which is pretty crazy. That's all I have to say. I mean, as we were talking about before, someone just made life-changing money, and like whoever bought 45 Bitcoin at 32 cents made life-changing money in seconds. Literally seconds. You can see the other orders 3 seconds later going for 10,100.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we were just talking about before we started recording. That is such a game changer. Such a game changer to go up 45 Bitcoin, randomly like that. It's pure luck. But it also brings up another topic, that these exchanges are highly susceptible to other infrastructure going on, right? So, Amazon Web Services was having an issue. A ton of exchanges today had issues, right? BitMEX definitely
do you
lost.
You want to know the swing of that? Do you want to know the swing? So
it's insane.
It cost $14 to buy that, and looking if I just use the price of 10,400, which Bitcoin was just at, so $14 to $469,000.
Yeah, I mean that is such a game changer. But it proves a good point that there's still a ton of infrastructure issues with exchanges and trading Bitcoin. It is not, a enterprise grade bulletproof trading software that people are using, the professional traders, right, that are dealing with legitimate exchanges. And I think it's a problem that's still being worked out. And it'll be cool to see if things like Backed, and even CME for that matter, just the difference in the quality of the exchange, and as they start to improve over time. You always do a good job of mentioning like slippage and things like that, and maybe thin order books across exchanges. A lot of that stuff is going to be worked out, but you can see when it's something like this that it's still so early. Bitcoin and trading Bitcoin is not a mature industry at all. No. But you're going to live that transition. People. It will be crazy in a couple of years to hear like, oh yeah, I used to only be able to withdraw on chain or something. Maybe we're using Lightning or a different scaling solution years from now to withdraw and sending to exchanges back and forth. You're not waiting, 20 minutes to send from one exchange to the other. Just a lot of different things will happen, but it just goes to show the immaturity of a lot of these exchanges for the time being.
Yeah, it's early and it's not early. Bitcoin's been around for over a decade, but in the grand scheme of things, it'd be like the internet in 2003. Sure, it'd been around and the internet bubble had popped, but think about all the things that came after that. Like Facebook, Snapchat, Pinterest, you name it, MySpace. You can just list a bunch of other things too. There's so many things. Square. I mean, the list keeps going on. So it's just one of those things. Yeah, sure, it's not as early as it used to be. That's a dumb thing to say, but it's still early in the grand scheme of things. It's a 10-year-old industry.
Right. Yeah, that's a good way to. I mean, it's crazy. It's a 10-year-old industry, and we're talking about a market from zero market cap to 150 billion also. So in 10 years, that's pretty quick.
Yeah. And it's probably a pretty good way to transition into what we've seen the last 2 years, especially, prior to 2017, for the most part, Bitcoin and crypto was shamed by most political figures, big bank names, etc. And the Bank of England's Governor Mark Carney, is basically stating that the U.S. dollar is destabilizing the role in the world economy on Friday, and said central banks might need to join together to create their own replacement reserve currency. And I put something like on one of my stories, like #Bitcoin or something like, but it's one of those interesting things. And basically, the dollar is just, no matter what. Let's see if we can pull up the dollar index. It's just been crushing everything else. Where we go, DXY. So I want to get. It dumped a little bit, but relative to the past in like 2014, I mean, it's up a lot. Even in 2011, shit. Obviously, it's not as high as it used to be, but still, it'll be interesting to see where this goes, forward. If we get a dollar breakout, strong dollar's very bad for emerging markets and for other countries. Obviously, like we've seen with the Chinese yuan got crushed and went over 7 for the first time ever. That was a big deal. And
yeah, I think this is an interesting topic. One of the reasons you brought up is that they were shitting on Bitcoin and virtual currency just as an idea in general, and now we're here, right?
Yeah, we've came a long way in 2 years.
Yeah, like we're at the point where it's becoming increasingly convincing that the U.S. dollar won't be the reserve currency in the foreseeable future. It's hard to put a timeline on that. I'm so fucking bullish on Bitcoin. It could maybe for 10 more years. Who knows? Maybe it'll take 20 or 30 more years. Yeah. But you have a number of different individuals across the globe, powerful people who are preparing for that transition of not having the US dollar as the reserve currency. And what would you say basically, as the reserve currency, use like the petrodollar, it's used for, trading oil. You could start to see a different base currency, and nobody has a clue what the new base currency would be. And it looks like from reading this, all of a sudden, now a virtual currency that is created by a group of central banks that would essentially replace the US dollar as the reserve currency. And that's really interesting to see just all of that unfold. And it's of course it's not going to happen overnight, if at all. It might not, but the fact that they're thinking about it, or even mentioning that they are thinking about it, and that the US dollar may not be the world reserve currency, it's humongous, because now you're going to, Woke Joe's going to talk about this next week for sure.
Yeah, next week's going to be interesting to say the least. If this whole weekend, just waiting, watching the news headlines, see if we get any kind of solution here to this whole trade deal, because it's not, in the macro sense for the markets, it's not obviously a good thing. I think the Asian markets are already closed, so it didn't matter. The U.S. was the only one left open, really. And I don't know if the European was still open when the China announced tariffs, on top of Powell's speech, too. Kind of jack the markets around today. I'm going to maybe, zoom in here. Yeah, I'm on the weekly. It doesn't look too pretty here, but I think today we went down almost 3% at one point on the S&P. NASDAQ Composite was down over 3%. Dow Jones is down over 2.5% at some points. But yeah, it was a pretty bad day. I'm going to zoom in just to show you. Like, we dumped hard on the tariff announcements this morning. Like, this is 5-minute candles. And the Powell speech kind of saved the market, because I think we gapped down and Powell spoke this morning. We filled the gap, and then boom. I think it was pretty funny, though. The last 5 minutes or so of trading, we rallied like 0.4%, which is pretty big. But still, didn't really make up for a really crappy day. I mean, it literally just the whole day down.
Yeah, and it's difficult, because every time we record on a Friday, we always say, well, we can't wait for next week to see what happens, because it's all that time goes by over the weekend, where at one point I remember, it feels like a couple weeks ago or months ago, as Bitcoin was, starting its ascension. It was like every weekend it was pumping, and then like you were waiting for Monday, and CME shorts were going to get wrecked at the open on Monday morning or Sunday night, and like it's hard to tell what's going to happen over the weekend. But with all this interesting macro news on a Friday, and then you have all weekend of who knows what's going to be said, tweeted, more data coming out. You really just never know. And then, you have Bitcoin that's trading 24/7. That can do whatever it wants over the weekend too, which could have influence to, Monday morning or Sunday night. And that's just where it it's really getting interesting. I know we probably say the same thing every single week, but it's another Friday into a Monday, and another down day for equities, and bonds. I know you wanted to touch on that for just a second. Bonds have been going absolutely insane, and we did touch on that last week slightly, but I don't know if you want to talk to it for a sec.
Yeah, so the sovereign debt of what was it, 16 trillion for global sovereign debt. Over 16 trillion now is negative yielding. And now here, Paranoid Bull, always posting good stuff. This chart was originally posted by Dave B. Collum. Follow David B. Collum, and also follow Paranoid Bull on Twitter. They're very good. Always good content. But anyways, here, total negative yielding corporate bonds outstanding. And I shit you not, and I don't mean to say it, it went from 20 billion on January 12th, 2019 to 1.089 trillion as of August 13th. So it was like a 50x in the span of 8 months, which is incredible. I mean, it's just going, and that's why we're seeing bonds, the price of bonds just rip people's face off, because each person's buying and handing off to the next, what is it? What's the correct term? You know what I'm thinking of.
The greater fool.
The greater fool, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. So this is the greater fool theory right here in essence. People are buying, like there's a pretty good chart I saw a while ago of like the Australian, long-term bond where it's just going, all these bonds are going parabolic in price. People are buying them up crazily. But it's...
Yeah. And it's funny because it's like there's a few people sounding the alarm, not many. And if you were looking at this as let's say a big
human being.
Yeah, if you were sane, and you saw these vertical parabolic moves in Bitcoin in 2017, and like of course I was like thrilled and ecstatic, but when I'm seeing that in the bond market, it makes me really uneasy. That like it's like, all right, well how long can this go on? Because as much as I guess you could use the greater fool theory or Ponzi scheme argument for Bitcoin, as you're hoping to just pass it off to the next sucker for more than you paid for it. That's clearly happening in bonds and negative yielding corporate debt, which is really like that doesn't even click with me. Negative yielding corporate debt and why there's so much of it anyway. It
doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't really make any sense, and you hear people trying to make justifications for it, like, now it's all of a sudden a part of your diverse portfolio, which is bullshit. It's bullshit. You're losing money on purpose, knowingly going
losing money on purpose. It's like you're already losing money. You're already losing money in cash. Why would you buy a negative yielding bond? Why would you lose more money on top of inflation? It makes no sense.
And you would only do that if you knew you could sell it to somebody else for more, right?
Exactly.
So then that's where
you're willing to lose the yield, a little bit of yield to sell the bond for 15, 20, sometimes even 100% higher. I mean, considering how much the negative yielding, it's went parabolic here. I mean, it's incredible.
Right, and that's, I mean, hindsight's going to be 20/20 with that. I'm sure people are going to put out really fire threads on what happens after this. I don't even know, because it could collapse or it could just completely go parabolic to the point where that it just doesn't even make sense anymore. There's going to be some fire threads about what happens after the fact, a little post-mortem that we're going to probably go through whenever that happens. But I can't even predict how it ends. Like, is this the middle? Is it the beginning? Is it gonna pop next week? You really can't tell with these things that are just going parabolic like that. And then you look at the chart of like the German mark, and it was going parabolic, and then boom, all of a sudden everyone realizes it was hyperinflation and it's over. And I know you're reading into that on When Money Dies.
I finished that a little bit ago. It's a good book. It's it's just one of those things where it's like you realize that a lot of the average person, just the financial literacy, same with back then and same with today, isn't that high. And that's obviously mostly to blame in the public schooling system. And, you have to be curious, and like CH and I have been just diving down this money financial rabbit hole I've been doing it for a couple of years, but Bitcoin really, really opened me up even more about 2.5 years ago, or so. And, it's just one of those things. It's absolutely incredible. Once you kind of go down that rabbit hole, it's hard to look at everything as normal again.
Right, right. And that's probably our favorite topic with just malinvestment in general. So when you think about malinvestment with negative rates, what you're saying is there's going to be so much malinvestment because now you can use the marshmallow example. Would you prefer 2 marshmallows today or 1 tomorrow? That's literally what negative interest rates. Yeah, I mean, that's literally what negative interest rates are like. So you're getting paid to borrow. So, I mean, you're not going to do your due diligence on what you're using that borrowed money for as an investment, right? You're just going to willy-nilly. Well, it doesn't matter. You're getting the money. You're literally getting paid to get the money. You'll just throw it at whatever. And there's just going to be so much more malinvestment if that continues for, the years to come. It'll be the same thing. Everything gets pumped up again, and we thought we were on the verge of collapse, and the can gets kicked down the road, and it'll just be an even bigger bust the next time around. But that's where the manipulation of the interest rates really just fucks everything up. It sucks.
Yeah, it was pretty funny. Earlier today I was at work and I had like CNBC on, and my boss was like, "This is, basically this is bullshit." Like 2 months ago, they're telling us the economy is the greatest economy ever, and today obviously the market's tanking and the Dow's down, over 500 points, and he's like, "Which is it?" And that's the issue. Most Americans who aren't really keen on this don't understand. Like, and I was, I mentioned to him, like, I was like, for the most part, most Americans haven't recovered from the last recession. And I don't know if the statistic's been updated, but 69% of Americans have less than $1,000 in a savings account. So when they get out of a job, when the recession hits hard, when they get less hours, less pay, etc., what happens? And even when you go up into the middle class in America, so many people live paycheck to paycheck, where they don't save money. They live at the very edge of their means as much as they can instead of reducing backwards. Oh,
totally. And that's something really hard to think about. I guess I never really thought about it, that the majority of people did not recover from the last recession.
No.
And, I guess
it's evident in small town America.
Right. And, I want to say that's something that I don't see enough to know.
Yeah.
I'm in a metropolitan area. Everybody apparently looks like they're doing well. But with that being said, the majority of the people that I see around here probably don't have that much saved up for a rainy day. And that includes a lot of the tech bros or software developers in the San Francisco area that are making $250,000 a year, but they have a $12,000 mortgage, right? And like just really insane stuff. And they're hoping to dump those real estate bags on millennials with no money. A lot of things are just out of whack here. Across asset classes, and because of asset inflation, it could get messy if those same people do lose their jobs and don't have the same amount of income going forward, and they haven't saved shit. So
yeah, and
that's where it starts to unravel.
There's a really interesting statistic, and I didn't know this as much, being originally from Detroit, because good auto industry is huge. There's a lot of people driving new cars, but when you get outside of, especially metropolitan areas, in smaller cities and towns, because I saw an interesting statistic. The average age of the car on the road in America is continually getting older since the recession, since 2008, 2009. And it's very noticeable when you're not in a wealthier area or a big city, that a lot of the cars on the road are 10, 12, 13 years, or if not older. Like I think the average car on the American road now is like 11 years old. And obviously that comes with safety issues and whatever. And it's because people just can't afford it. Or, as I've seen in the auto industry, people, buy cars. They go to buy a car that they can't afford, and they just get stuck in this payment cycle where they're paying every month. And that's all, and so all their money's going there instead of saving it and investing it somewhere else. And obviously this is going to come back hard on the American people, as we see auto loan debt is well past $1 trillion now. And delinquency rates are increasingly getting higher. I think the delinquency rates, like after 90 days, if they don't pay, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. I think we talked about that even months ago, that the delinquency rates were going up. And it was probably like Jesse Colombo who had mentioned it, because he's keeping track of all of these different bubbles that have been forming since the last global financial crisis. And it's awesome to watch, because
he's gone like full prepper mode. I've seen him post before. He's like, people don't understand, like this is like the And
that's why he calls it the
right
everything bubble, right? I mean, it's the everything
it
bubble.
Is literally everything.
So many different things.
Yeah. It's not just, and I think one of the most interesting things for me to watch, I think it'll be one, professional sports. What will happen in the case of a very sharp downturn. I think, you're going to see the crazy salary, the salaries that these, some NFL, NBA, you name it, MLB players get cut because there's people are going to stop, watching and stop attending games. And it's always funny to me. People bitch about fucking CEO pay, CFO pay, executive pay. And you never hear one person complain about someone getting like $100 million contract to fucking throw a football or fucking, hit a baseball. You never hear people bitch about that. And how those people aren't doing, I mean, sure, they're somewhat doing something for the economy, but they really aren't.
Right. No, yeah.
They're entertainment. They're bread and circus, as they say.
And that's interesting because maybe Jesse should look into this. That's like its own bubble. How many athletes, even in the last 12 to 24 months, have been getting like record breaking contracts for whether it's a certain position or, getting an additional 10 years with, $10 million a year, something, just a lot of these like maxed out deals. And I think that totally makes sense in this time period that we're living in. Everything like a professional athlete is an asset to a team, and you're willing to throw stupid money at it, with the thought process being, well, I'm going to make that up on the back end with ticket sales, merchandise, whatever.
Yeah, advertising, you name it.
Like, so the cost of, I guess that's like your cost of goods sold almost, or those professional athletes, and that's really going up because they would be an asset on your balance sheet, I would assume. Yeah. So you're seeing that inflation in all of these things, whether it be real estate prices, homes, whether it be professional athletes, and I think it will just another piece of the puzzle that you can put together when you're doing your postmortem on whatever happens next and saying, oh yeah, that makes sense. I can't believe what's his name got the most ridiculous sports contract in human history at the top of the bubble.
Yeah. I watch so little sports now. Like occasionally just ESPN will be on work, but like I only think time or at the gym I'll see it. But like I just watch so little sports and follow so little of it because, to be honest, the greatest show in the world is the markets. It really is. There's a quote of that, and it is the greatest show. Nothing tops it.
It's the greatest show because you can profit from it. Like you can play. I mean, I guess a lot of people love betting on sports, and I personally don't, but I've had money on a couple of games, and it does make things more exciting, and it makes you want to pay attention. Maybe you join a fantasy league or something, but there's nothing fantasy about having exposure to the markets at all. It is certainly real. We talk about it every single week. And the one thing we talked about last episode that I think I forgot to mention here is all of this is happening, and you have so many people thinking we're at that tippity top, right? And we don't know what's going to happen next. And this time around, Bitcoin exists, and it will be interesting to see whether or not that even makes a difference. If it's a deflationary recession and markets crash, bonds, crash, maybe Bitcoin crashes too.
Such a drop in a bucket, though.
Right, and that's I think
it's like what, 100-some billion, 150.
Right, and that's the point. Like, if it gets absolutely wrecked, another 80% drawdown in the event of a deflationary recession, I would completely understand that because it's not enough. Not enough people would take a step back and look at themselves and say, I know enough about Bitcoin to put a percentage of my net worth into it in the event of a deflationary recession, like they would with gold. The average person might say, oh, gold sounds like a good idea. Things look like it's going to, shit's going to hit the fan. There's not enough people that are going to think to go to Bitcoin. But then you have this other very small group of people who think that they do know better. And I know enough about Bitcoin to think that it's, regardless if there's a deflationary crash and across all markets, that it's going to come back. And, next thing you know, we're back at where we are a couple of months from now, and it'll have been the greatest trade ever. And that is the question on everybody's mind. What happens with Bitcoin in this example? And if it's in the off chance that it's an inflationary recession, that gets really interesting. with Bitcoin. So either way, I think we're in for a wild ride, and it's going to go one way or another.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, and I just want to mention the tariff stuff just so people can hear what happened. Basically, China said they're going to levy new tariffs on $75 billion of goods come the fall, and shortly, and that obviously made the market dump. President Trump fired back. I'll read his tweet just because it's funny. And this is also, we are living in the peak of the times. Like, the President of the United States is tweeting at all times a day. I don't even know how he keeps up with it. How is he alive? Like, all times a day. You think about it. From fucking 7 a.m. to fucking midnight. He basically says, sadly, past administrations have allowed China to get so far ahead of fair and balanced trade that it has become a great burden to the American taxpayer. As president, I can no longer allow this to happen. In the spirit of achieving fair trade, we must balance this very unfair trading relationship. China should not have put new tariffs on $75 billion of United States product. And he puts in parentheses, politically motivated. Exclamation point. Starting October 1st, the $250 billion of goods and products from China currently being taxed at 25% will be taxed at 30%. There's one or two thoughts running through my mind. They're gonna come to some kind of deal here and pump the shit out of the markets. Like, if that happens, we're gonna see a retarded day in the equity indices, like 4 or 5%, like we saw on the December 26th. After Christmas break.
The day after I sold everything.
Dude, it's okay. Everyone thought the world was ending then. I think everyone did, including all the bank CEOs. I mean, literally, when we can go back and it doesn't like when you looked at the chart, like, if it wasn't for the Fed caving, and China pumping $1 trillion of liquidity into the markets, yeah, we were pretty effed. No, it looked like the game was over. It was great.
No, it's too far. That's too far.
There we go. See it?
That's that's the beginning of 2018. You got to go to the right a little bit more.
No, I'm talking about, look at the right of the screen though. I'm just showing you this is what it looked like.
Oh yeah.
Where you literally, it just was like, oh great, we're going off in this endless abyss into Christmas, and then we bounced.
It really is insane.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see. I think Trump and his team probably has something up their sleeves too. I think it's a lot of his talk and, getting it out, and then they can, play the card that they got a deal or something, the next week and pump the markets higher. Maybe I'm wrong. If I am, then, well, here we go.
Right. Either way, we're going to talk about it next week and hopefully get another episode out about it to see if any of our, not predictions, but, it's tough to say. It's really tough to say. So if you sit back, not even just looking at the charts, if you just think about what's happening with prices, it's been a really volatile year, both up and down. And I guess the same could be said with Bitcoin. And all of a sudden, everybody can feel that uncertainty, right? Like, everybody has a little uncertainty about something. There's more job layoffs than people are actually talking about. The markets are really flip-floppy. Bitcoin is doing its own thing. You've got trade wars. You've got currency wars. You've got bad numbers coming out of China. You have riots and protests in Hong Kong and France. There's just a lot going on, and I guess all of it will be obvious in hindsight when people start putting the puzzle pieces together. But now it's real time today, so we have to try to put it together while we're just watching it unfold. And I don't know. That's why it's interesting, though.
Yeah, I just gotta read one thing. Someone said the president just called the Fed. This is from a tweet from earlier from Rhythm Trader. The president just called the Federal Reserve an enemy and compared them to an authoritarian regime. This is the most bullish thing I've ever heard for Bitcoin.
Dude, I love Rhythm Trader.
Let's get Donald Trump and Rand Paul and Ron Paul on the Fed train, and then throw them all on Joe Rogan's podcast. Dude, could you imagine the numbers for the Joe Rogan Trump podcast? You understand? That'd be like 100 million views in a day.
He would just be smiling the entire time. I don't know what he would. I can't believe you're here to talk to me, and I don't know what I would. I don't know what I would think if that actually happened. It would be unbelievable.
It would be incredible.
Oh my god.
Maybe it's a good way to wrap this up here.
Yeah, definitely. This was episode 37 of the Beef and Bitcoin podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for sticking with us for the last couple of weeks. It's been pretty volatile. It's been a little stable for Bitcoin. Everybody's waiting for things to happen, but the good news is that more news keeps coming out every week. That makes it so exciting to keep watching. If you like listening to this podcast, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, follow us on Spotify, follow us on YouTube, leave us a comment, shoot us a DM, let us know what you think of the show. If there's any, thank you for a couple people who did reach out about going in depth into a few other topics. So that's going to be on our radar for the next couple of weeks. So please shoot us a DM and let us know if there's anything specific you'd like us to give our take on. We'd be happy to do it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Cheers.